Hi, everyone. I am Eve Richards, host of the Discovery Pod with Eve. Welcome back to season 3 of the Discovery Pod with Eve. It is so good to be back on air. Want to first of all start by thanking Roger Neal, who is my publicist and also co-produces the show with me, for all the work he's done to get us ready for season 3. We've got such exciting guests, and actually today we've got someone who used to be a doctor, Jackie Dallas. But she decided to pivot and she's now an actress. So we'll delve into her background a little later. Joining me today as my co-host is Tony Blas, who was with us during season 1 and season 2. So much has changed since our last episode aired with Tony in season 2. He's lost about 115 pounds. Tony's father, who was an actor, recently passed away. So I've got to start off by welcoming Tony back. And Tony, I am so sorry to hear about the passing of your father. Secondly, I am sorry to see that you hurt yourself and you still made it to the show. So welcome.
Thank you, Eve. It's so great to be back. I'm really looking forward to the 3rd season. The first 2 are fantastic, and it's nice to be here a little leaner and a little more comfortable doing that. Except for I hurt my Achilles tendon at the gym the last couple of days, and I don't know if I'll have to have surgery or not. But the show must go on, and I certainly wanted to be here for this one.
Oh, thank you. And again, condolences. I know your father recently passed away, who was a fellow actor as well. May his soul rest in peace. Any words that you'd want to say about him?
Well, just that he had such positivity, and he followed his dream to California and then to becoming an actor. And he had his first heart attack when he was 25. Wow. And he lived to 87.
Incredible.
So he kind of walked with death for 62 years, and he beat it every day. You know, he ended up having a heart transplant.
Wow.
Even in his 40s. And then he decided at that point he wasn't going to do anything but be an actor, and that's what he did, and I just admired him so much for that.
Incredible. And I also have to do a little bit of remembrance. I lost my cousin, Johan, who was such an incredible person. It's actually because of him that I have this cup, the bling. So he passed away on Monday in New York City. And just like your father, he lived a very full life. He was an artist. He was a film critic. May his soul rest in peace. But as you said, the show must go on. And I've got to welcome Jackie Dallas. Not everyone walks away from a white coat to step into the spotlight, but Jackie did. She earned her medical degree, trained as a physician, and then made the defining decision to leave certainty behind in pursuit of storytelling. Since then, she's appeared in globally recognized series such as Stranger Things, Criminal Minds, and Mindhunter, while expanding her work behind the camera as a director, producer, and writer. Most recently, she appeared in the television adaptation of The Haunting Wives, stepping into a world built on tension, secrecy, and psychological stakes. Jackie's work is anchored in identity, emotional truth, and meaningful representation, consistently exploring who we become when we choose purpose over expectation. Her journey from medicine to film is more than a career shift. It is a testament to courageous reinvention, grounded resilience, and the power of transforming personal evolution into purposeful storytelling, all of which lie at the core of season 3. Jackie, welcome to the Discovery Pod with Eve. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. What an intro.
Well, right? Awesome. I'm going to start off by asking you. You began your professional life in medicine before transitioning fully into acting and filmmaking. When you think about who you are now, what part of the early chapter still lives inside of your creative process today?
Oh, gosh. When I think about where I am now in LA as an actor, I mean, I think life is all what is that? Such a cheesy phrase to start with. Life is a journey, right? So I feel like every step of the way you learn from the previous chapters in your life, and I feel that me being in LA right now, living this moment that I am, riding the high of my show, Hunting Wives, I feel like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the previous chapters. So I have such an appreciation for everything that I have done and learned along the way. Even just getting into medicine. I mean, it seems like such a 180 pivot there, but it really was something that I'd been thinking about for so many years and something I've always wanted to do. So to be able to kind of go full circle, so to speak, and go back to my roots of what my passions were, I think it's a beautiful thing.
Incredible.
It is beautiful. Now, I've known some people who have transitioned from the medical industry into acting. My sister's one of them, actually. But in most cases, there was usually a medical drama involved, and they wanted not only acting, but also kind of like expertise or consultancy on that. But I don't see a lot of medical dramas in your background, do I? Am I missing something?
Like as far as shows that I've been on?
Yeah.
Well, I was on The Resident in their season 2, which is on Fox. I played a nurse on that show. And then, it's funny. My first few roles, my first few co-star roles, my under fives, where you hop on screen and say a few things and hop out, they were in the medical field. It's so funny. I was like paramedic number 2 or EMT number 3, and I think that getting your foot in the door is so hard as an actor, especially for me. Like, I didn't go to school for it. I didn't have this, decade-long background of, hustling in LA, trying to figure that out. Having that medical background, I think, is what gave me that foot in the door.
Wow.
Being able to say I was a real medical doctor is what casting offices were like, oh, she's got this. Nurse, EMT, like, she's got this. She knows what she's doing. And I think that's what really kind of helped me, when I first moved to LA. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, how every chapter of your life helps the one next to you, So me coming here wanting to be an actress, if it wasn't for that, I might still be, banging on doors right now,
Incredible. I'm going to piggyback on that question because I sort of mentioned that earlier when I did the intro. Leaving behind a very stable career as a doctor and pivoting and transitioning into acting, did you always have that in you when you were younger, that you wanted to become an actress?
Yeah, I always wanted to be an actress. I always wanted to be a storyteller and a performer. And the reason I didn't pursue it at first is because I grew up in this very small town in Florida. And I think when you live in a place outside of California or New York, especially if it's a smaller town, you don't really picture Hollywood as a tangible career. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is a life reserved for the rich and the famous and the beautiful. And as an Asian American growing up in this small town in Florida, I just didn't see that as a likely future for myself. And I grew up in a family of doctors. My parents are both doctors. My sister's a doctor, like everyone is. So for me, that was just kind of the natural next step.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is stable. I understand it. I'm familiar with it. I'm good at it. Like, let's just do what's easy. I shouldn't say easy. Medicine is not easy.
But it's basically like...
But
we're saying it's not brain surgery.
It's a straightforward path for me, right?
That totally makes sense because I come from a family of lawyers. My mom, my father, my brother. And so I can see totally. That makes a lot of sense.
And I think that, like, having an academic mind, my family, they're all very academically gifted, and just it's hard to switch gears to a creative mindset because you're raised thinking like, oh, you don't want to be a starving artist.
Yes.
Right? So to be able to kind of break apart from that mentality and say, you know what, I'm going to do it and I'm not going to starve, then.
So how did you break away from that? And how did you get to California?
It was a series of serendipitous events. I love that. I knew in the back of my mind I always wanted something a little more creative with my life. I was working, I was doing my training, I was going through residency, and it was it was a great job. It's a very honorable job, but it wasn't creatively fulfilling for me. And as an artist, sometimes, you know, you just have this like this itch that needs to be scratched, right? So my husband, who I also met in med school, the plan was for him to come to Chicago, which is where I was working at the time. And smarty pants that he is, ended up matching at Stanford in California. And so the one thing about medicine is that wherever you're matched for residency, that's where you go. You don't really have a whole lot of choice in the matter for it. It's kind of like if you're deployed.
Yeah.
So, you know, so to speak. So we had a conversation where we're like, all right, well, what do we do? You know, residency is 3 to 7 years, depending on your specialty, not counting fellowship after that. Do we spend this amount of time apart? Like, is that a relationship? Is that something that's a viable future? Or does one of us compromise on our career goals? Or, you know, like, what do we do at this point? And long story short, he knew that my passions lay elsewhere. And I was getting through my second winter at the time in Chicago, and as a
That's
Florida
a winter,
girl, right?
Yes.
As a Florida gal, the winters were not for me. So I said, honey, why don't you go to California, and I will meet you there, and we'll figure it out. And he was so incredibly supportive. I come to California, and with medicine, it's state-by-state licensing. So I was kind of at a place where I would have to start over if I was to try and be a doctor here in California. But he's kind of like, why don't you just try something new? You know, you always talk about doing something. We're in California. This is the place to do it. Granted, you know, San Francisco, Stanford, that's 5-6 hours away. Palo Alto. But, you know, who knows California geography when you're from the East Coast? But I did. I started out doing background work, short films, student films, commercial work. You know, the Bay Area has a really...
I lived in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of good work
yeah.
out there, too. And so
Awesome.
I got my start, and the acting bug
in
bit
San
me.
Francisco. Awesome. So this is a good transition to The Hunting Wives, which introduces your character. I may not be pronouncing it correctly.
Zhao Yi.
Zhao Yi, a strategy. She was an influence and perception in a world of hidden agendas. What drew you most to her inner psychology beyond the surface of politics and suspense?
Oh, the thing I love about Zhao Yi is that she is so smart and she is so ambitious. And she's such a different character from the other hunting wives on the show. Everyone has an agenda on that show. I think that's what makes it such an interesting, exciting thriller. But she, you know, her character is not straightforward either. She's got her own ulterior motives, so to speak, also. And if you've seen the whole season, then you see where she, you know, where her position is in the finale. And
Amazing.
yeah. I think
And is there season 2 in the works?
Season
or-
2 just got renewed. They're going to be going into pre-production, or they're in pre-production now. I think they're going to start shooting in a couple of weeks.
And what
So-
about your character? Should we expect or
Well, season 1 was quite the cliffhanger.
you can't reveal?
So we'll see. I'm just waiting on calls from my agent.
Well, we're keeping our fingers crossed for you because I think your character is
too.
fantastic.
Thank you.
So I love the way you look, and we kind of matched today.
Oh, we got the memo.
But apparently you are known for your glam unapologetically. And so what is your feel-good outfit when you need a confidence boost?
Glam. Oh, I like that. I didn't know that about myself.
Oh yes.
Bold
But I
looks?
love that perception.
Oh, yes.
perception.
First
No?
of all,
You
I
agree?
forgot to mention that Jerky and I actually met at a party.
We did.
And we have
The
some
first
amazing
time.
pictures.
Yes.
So,
Oh, and this
I
one is
mean,
all about glam
oh
looks
my
too,
goodness.
right?
No, we have
I love
some
it. We
amazing-
gravitated towards each other.
It was actually the eve of my birthday, and we have this amazing pictures from that, and she looked fantastic.
Ah,
So
thank you. I mean, I think when you live in LA, any opportunity to dress up is a good one, right? Like, where can you do that anywhere else? Every day's a red carpet. I'm of two complete opposite ends of the spectrum. On one hand, if I'm home, I mean, I'm such a bum. I am a sweatpants and a tank top gal. But if I do go out, I try to clean up nice, I try to clean up.
More than nice, I should say. I literally wish I could pull up some of those pictures. She looked fantastic.
My friend turned me on to Rent the Runway, and I have to
Yes, I love
say, like
that.
my wardrobe, my photos, my Getty images, it's done a big change. I love it.
Amazing. So we've got to talk about Stranger Things. It exposed you to a massive global audience earlier in your screen journey. How did that experience shape your confidence
Oh,
and sense of belonging in the industry that can feel both welcoming and selective?
Stranger Things is always going to have such a warm place in my heart. It really changed the trajectory of my career. It really fast tracked it for me, and I'm so grateful. And, it was such a funny experience of doing that as my very first SAG credit, really, my very first
Wow.
SAG credit. Now, keep in mind, at the time, it was, Netflix films everything at once so that they could release everything at once. So when I got cast for the show, we were working under a code name. It wasn't called Stranger Things at the time. I was excited as an actor. I was telling my friends, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on this show. And nobody was as excited about it as I was. They're like, well, what is it called? It's like, oh, it's called Montauk. I was like, I've never heard of it. Who's it? What's it about? Oh, it's like an 80s kids and monsters. Like, okay, like who's in it?
Yeah.
Oh, Winona Ryder, but like she hasn't done anything in about 10 years
Yes.
before. A bunch of kids. Everyone's like, okay, good job. Happy for you, right? Fast forward, the show comes out, and they didn't do a whole lot of advertising for the show at first because it wasn't considered like a high budget show. I think the Duffer Brothers, who directed it, they had done maybe 1 or 2 series before that, so they were also relatively fresh to the scene. And I just remember that first weekend, I wanted to have a watch party. I come in episode 7 out of 8, so 7 hours in. My friends are like, maybe we'll just come over like in the afternoon. I was like, fine, I'll just eat pizza by myself. But the weekend after it came out, all of a sudden it just caught on like wildfire, right?
Incredible.
Like word of mouth. People were like, oh, you got to watch the show. You got to watch the show. And I kid you not, like this is my first role. I am not accustomed at this point to being in any kind of public light. My Instagram just started blowing up one day.
Oh my gosh.
My friends that I hadn't spoken to in years were like
Everyone's
messaging me
calling
on
you,
Facebook
right?
from like high school. Like,
Expecting you
is
to be.
this you? So it was so cool. It was such a cool experience to be a part of.
Now, they tell you not to work with animals or children, but you obviously hadn't heard that advice, or you
News to
ignored
me.
it. Okay, so what was it like working with so many young actors?
So I saw them in passing mostly. My scenes were with Randy Haven, who plays Mr. Clark, the science teacher on the show. He was wonderful, by the way. He was so kind. I don't know if he knew how nervous I was to be on set that day, but he was very, very nice. I can't get over how talented the kids are on this show. And I think they really might have been the first show, and I know I'm biased because I'm on it, but it might have been the first show where I saw kid actors where I was like, they are all so good. I feel like
Well-trained.
and when you learn their training, like you said, a lot of them were theater actors. They were seasoned, right? I think when you go back and watch other shows or other films and the kid actors are just okay, you really see the difference.
Or they're 28.
Or they're
Yeah.
Right?
I'm in middle school. Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. So, I gotta say, what advice this is a wonderful industry to be in. I mean, I love what I do. Love working with people like Tony, of course, having Roger, wonderful actors, actresses, but it's also very competitive, very difficult. A lot of people out there usually think it's all glam, not knowing there's a lot of work and effort. You got to study. What advice would you give someone who is trying to navigate the industry, someone who's listening to this in China or in India, in Africa? They want to be able to, transition into the industry, which you've done so beautifully.
My answer has changed over the years. I think when I first started out, my answer was something like, just do it, go for it, create your own content. And I think a lot of that still rings true. But more recently, I'm recognizing that at the end of the day, the entertainment business is a business.
Yeah.
And if you adopt that mindset going into it, it helps you on so many levels.
Oh, yeah.
One, how does the industry work? Just educating yourself about what an audition is, how that relates to casting, how that relates to studio, producers, directors. How do you fit into that wheel? What do you bring to the table? Because as much as we want to be like, oh, I'm so talented, I'm so deserving of this, and your mom thinks you're so great, the business is not out to make your dreams come true.
Yeah.
They're here to make TV shows and movies that sell. And
Of course.
I mean, we hear it more and more and more now, especially that, the box office, the numbers. I mean, there's so many changes happening in the industry right now about the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
So I think kind of understanding what's happening in the industry and how that will affect you, I think really sets you up to, best position yourself to be what they need
I like
and what
that.
they want.
Yeah.
Does that, I hate
Oh,
saying
yeah.
like you're just
No,
a
you're right.
product,
No.
but
I like that, and I gotta say, when I was much younger, I took some acting, and I did a little bit of acting, but then went to college, was supposed to become an attorney. I am so glad I have the marketing background, because it makes me look at things from a totally different perspective. At the end of the day, as you said, it's a business, right? So we are talent there to do work, but at the end of the day, you've got to understand how the business works. So that's a great advice.
So, have you ever been to South Korea?
I just got back from South Korea, actually. Yes. My family and I, we've been planning this trip for over a year now. There's been a series of events. They kept getting pushed back. But my sister, her husband, me, my husband, and my parents, we planned a trip for the 6 of us to go for 2 weeks to South Korea. We went a couple months ago. We got back. I mean, it was such a great trip. My parents had not been back to Korea in over 40 years.
Wow.
And our husbands have never been before. And even for me, I don't think I've been in probably about 15, 20 years. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
Well, I got my first chance to go there last year. I performed in a music festival.
That's amazing.
When I was there, though, I found so many expats from around the world. Canadian, Americans, of course. A cousin of mine from Toledo. I didn't even know he moved to Seoul. And all these actors from France and all over Europe. And so I had to ask, why are you here? What are you doing here? Apparently, Seoul is like the new Paris of the 20s, attracting all kinds of entertainers and also achieving so many new milestones in music and acting and television, movies, and so forth. So I was just wondering if you had any interest or knowledge of participating in their entertainment industry, which is apparently just absolutely exploding.
Oh gosh, yeah. Short answer, yes.
Wow.
That would be amazing. I would love that. I mean, I had such a great time. We spent most of our time in Seoul, but it's such a vibrant city. It's like New York, but even more so.
yeah.
It's hard to explain, but there's so much going on. There was so much to do. I mean, it's such a large city. There's different neighborhoods, different pockets, so to speak, depending on like what your vibe
Gundam
is.
style.
That's a big one, apparently. Yeah.
So, I mean, if I had the chance to go and work over there or be a part of any of that budding entertainment world, I mean, heck yeah, I would.
course,
I
totally.
would.
So this is a question that I get asked a lot. Representation matters. As an Asian American actress working in major stories, what nuance around representation or identity do you feel is still misunderstood or unexplored in mainstream storytelling?
I think we're getting a lot better about this. So I will give credit where credit is due, especially for the Asian American, side of representation. I think K-pop, K-dramas are helping out a lot with that too. But I think that there's always room for improvement for sure. I think that we're doing great as far as telling Asian stories. That's starting to peek through, and that sort of authenticity is so important. I do think there's more nuanced depictions. Like we're not all crazy rich Asians, right? we're sometimes we're kind of this in between Asian, and then Asian Americans. Like my experience growing up in a small town in Florida, it's not. I mean, that's not something I've seen before. Growing up Asian American in a big urban city, now that's cool. I've lived in cities, and I can identify with that too. But kind of there's so many stories to be told, I guess is what I'm saying, that we're just barely scratching the surface. I'm grateful that when I first started out auditioning, I remember my first auditions were very stereotypical types, right? You're a nail technician, you're a masseuse. I'd go into an audition and they'd ask me to do an accent, and I don't have one. Maybe a southern one will come through every once in a while, which is very strange. But I think seeing less and less of that happening and more, major characters, supporting characters that influence the plot and influence, they're not being written ethnically specific. And I think that opens up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities for a lot of us who maybe never had that opportunity before. And I'm so grateful for that.
So I'm going to piggyback on that, on the small town. Do you think growing up in a small town then definitely was beneficial for you coming into a place like LA?
Yes and no. I think it helped me. I think it helped me later on as an adult, when hindsight is, hindsight's 20/20, right? I think growing up at the time, I had a lot of struggles with identity. I didn't really understand where I belonged, what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to act, how I was supposed to dress. I used to get frustrated with my parents. I was like, why do you guys have to be doctors? Why don't you own a restaurant somewhere?
Oh my God.
Just backwards, silly things that was based off of the representation that I had seen at the time, right? This is why representation matters. But now that I've, lived in major cities, I've lived in New York and Chicago and San Francisco, and now I'm in Los Angeles. I feel like I have a stronger sense of identity, so to speak, because I've had the years to kind of figure it out. Yeah. And I also will credit that I think I have a pretty thick skin between, the bullying that comes with it, and also medicine.
Yes.
Medical school and residency, that's a hazing process in itself. So I think coming into, the world of acting at the time in my 30s, later in life, was beneficial for me in so many ways, because I was able to handle the rejection. I was able to handle the scrutiny and the criticisms, like someone telling me oh, you don't look right. That didn't bother me as much, because that was something I knew was beyond my, anything I could do about it. And so I just focused on what I could change, which was my craft and my skills and learning about the industry. And that's kind of what kept my head in the game.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing, because identity is so important, but also what you just touched on, and I experienced the same as well, where I was always telling my parents, why couldn't you do something more fun, being a fun career? And I struggled with that as well. And I hate to say it, I struggled with identity, just because people always ask, oh, Eve, who are you? Are you black? Are you white? What are you? And I had a hard time. And I think people sometimes see me out there and they think, oh, she's all confident and I dress a certain way. But there's a lot of insecurity that happened when I was much younger in life. And so thank you so much for sharing that.
And you have also advocated for women's issues, specifically women's pelvic health. How do you use your platform to raise awareness and promote causes that you believe in?
Yeah, this is something I'm stepping into more and more. When I left being a doctor behind, it's something you don't entirely let go of, right? You spend so many years pursuing that. So I finally find myself in a position where I've got a bit more of a platform, I've got a bit more of a voice, and so I'm going through, like what can I use it for? What good can I put back into the world? And medicine is just something that always comes back for me. And women's health specifically is something I've always been interested in as a woman. So when I was still doing like research in medicine, one of my big focuses was disparities, whether it was gender disparities, socioeconomical disparities, demographic disparities, and just seeing how, the same condition in two different populations were treated differently and had different outcomes because of that. My husband, who I also met in research, he is now a urologist, and he specializes in women's pelvic health. And he did research with me, is how we met. So we have a lot of things aligned. Through his training, I've been introduced to a lot of amazing, urogynecologists and urologists. Wonderful. And so we've got this nice little circle of talented, advocacy-minded doctors. And as our current administration is making changes, and we're facing certain challenges in the healthcare world. One of the things that we do, my husband and I, is we do as much advocacy as possible. So we're going to different events and we're donating to causes. He's got a trip planned to go to DC soon. He's a delegate over at the California Medical Association. So we're trying to do our part from that side of things, because that is ultimately, policy comes from above. But I also recognize that you can't always rely on that change, especially now. It feels like you're just banging on a door and no one's listening. So the next best thing, I think, is to help women themselves, educate them about their bodies, because that's an educational point that is, I think, glazed over in a lot of our growing up. Teach them about their bodies, and then also teach them about conditions and how these things that are perceived as embarrassing or shameful, they're not talked about because they've shamed us into not talking about them. And the more you understand that this is, I don't want to say normal because it's not normal, but it's common.
Yeah.
Like a lot of female pelvic issues happen when you get older, when you hit menopause, when you have children, and they just simply don't talk about these issues because they don't feel comfortable doing so. So letting them know that they're not alone, what these conditions are, how to treat them, and how to find help for them, how to advocate for themselves, seek a second opinion if they need to. I think that's the most empowering thing that we can do for women right now. So that's kind of my other avenue of advocacy, where I'm working with these urogynecologists in LA, and we're finding ways and products and creating supplements to really allow women to help themselves.
Amazing. So what new projects are you currently working on that you'd like our audience to know about?
Sure. So knock on wood, season 2 of Hunting Wives has been renewed. I just finished working on an indie horror movie called Her Monster. We shot for a few weeks out in Phoenix. That's in post-production, and I'm really excited. I worked with a really, really great cast and a really, really great crew. And those are the 2 that I can talk about right now.
Awesome.
Nice.
So looking at your more recent projects, including the Hunting Wives, which we just talked about, what story are you hoping your career is beginning to tell? Like when you look at your career trajectory, is there one thing that you're like, oh, okay, I'm headed this way? What?
I think Hunting Wives has been my it's been my biggest role so far, my most impactful
Incredible.
role so far.
Were you in 3 episodes?
I was in 3 episodes for this first season.
That's fantastic.
And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. So I think that this is kind of my first foray into, I don't know, just really being able to explore and push the extents of like me as an actor, like trying to figure out what am I what am I capable of doing? And it's such a layered and nuanced, complex character that I really, it's fun to kind of dig into that and figure out, like, how would I, as Jackie Dallas, react in this situation? How can I make it Zhao Yi? Like, how can I make it fun, right? Because I think that all good characters are, they come from a root of the actor themselves. That's what makes it authentic, right? I think also moving forward, this piques my curiosity of all the other types of characters and roles that I have not yet had the option to play and would love to one day. I think I read a quote, Emma Stone, I think she just said it in one of her interviews, how she was like, I love to do things that scare me, because she's been taking on such adventurous roles and just killing it. She's
and
just
her
been
most
doing
recent,
amazing.
that's not out.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hear that, and I think at first my insecurities or my inexperience was oh no, that's too scary. I'll stay in the world of procedurals and medical, and but now I'm really like, no, push me. Let's see what I can do.
I like that. That's incredible.
So earlier you were talking about how you, considering it's a business designed to make money, and you have to be a thing, that thing, something that they want. What advice would you give to a young actor in what can they do to be something that the industry wants?
Well, the basics, you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself as professionally as possible, right? There's so many people that move to LA every day with high hopes, So to set yourself apart is, be professional and be ready to work. Have your headshots, have professional headshots. Have a resume, and if you feel like you don't have anything to put on the resume, dig deep. Did you do any school plays? Did you do any, web series or podcasts? Or do you have your own channel on TikTok? Create your own content. Have something to put on there, and then take classes, workshops. Show that you're taking the initiative, and you'll learn just from being around people who are in this industry, taking classes from them, learning from them, even doing background work. I know later on in your career, background work doesn't carry a whole lot of weight, but honestly, that's where I learned so much early on. Because
as well.
you learn about set etiquette, you understand how production works, the flow of things, who you can and cannot talk to, how long things actually take. And then when you're around other background actors, ask them questions, pick their brains. A lot of them have been doing this for years, and you also learn what not to do. I think you do learn a lot of that too. So put yourself out there, create your content, and then, like I said before, learn about the industry. Right now, verticals is a big thing.
Yes,
huge. It's blowing up. And right now, it's all non-union from what I understand. I know SAG is talking about trying to make those now under a SAG contract, which is great. But I do know a lot of actors, a lot of my non-union actors, they're getting their foot in the door by doing these verticals. And you know what? They pay really good.
Yeah, good for them.
So I think it's a great, but you have to know it exists. Right? And it's on Actors Access. You can self-submit for them. You don't need an agent. So if you're resourceful and you've got your materials as best as they can be, then, start putting yourself out there. And with time and due diligence, your work is going to start to speak for itself.
I like that. And I think one other thing to add to that is networking. It's funny how a lot of friends usually say, but Eve, you're on the red carpet. Being on the red carpet is not necessarily being on a carpet. Being on the carpet is networking. You want to be seen. I think it's so important, as you said. Visibility is so important in the industry. So attending events to get your name out there, to network and meet different people as well, I think is very, very helpful. So I'll ask you, when you're away from acting, what do you do to keep yourself, how do you stay grounded? That's the one thing that I always ask someone, because, this is a very difficult industry and it's very stressful. How do you stay mentally zen?
I try and surround myself with friends who will keep me in my place. Like my college girlfriends or, anyone who's not in the industry. They're like, okay. I think that finding passions outside of acting helps a lot. I think when you first dive into this industry, it's so intoxicating. And you can find yourself just absolutely buried in it with no boundaries. You know, when you're starting out, you want to say yes to everything.
Oh, yes.
You're up until 2 a.m. looking for, I don't know, opportunities. I mean, you could be doing this 24/7 and just working hard, but not working smart is one way to put it. I think a lot of artists fall into the trap of defining their worth by their art. And if they feel like they're not working, then they're not worth anything, right? How many times have we heard, oh, you're an actress, what have I seen you in? And up until you get that first credit, you're like, oh, well, you haven't seen me in anything. That doesn't mean you're not an actor, you know, but you can make you feel bad. So find something that brings you happiness, that allows you to have your creative outlet, but it doesn't necessarily, stress you out, right?
So we're down to the last 2 minutes. Wow, this has gone by so fast. The last question, Jackie, if you were to have dinner with 3 people dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, this is that question.
I won.
Let's see. I would say Michelle Yeoh, because she is
Fantastic. Her
amazing.
body of work is
Oh my God, she's so inspiring and she's so poised and
Oh my
she's
God.
so
Crutch and
just
Tiger.
a classic. Like she's a trailblazer, especially for the Asian community. You know, I wanna just pick her brain and thank her for kicking down the doors that I get to walk through. You know, Keanu Reeves, because he's the world's favorite human being, and I'd love to
very humble as well. he
love
seems.
to just get life notes from him. You know, he seems like he's got it figured out, and maybe Jennifer Lawrence.
Awesome.
She just
The
seems like a
law.
fun gal to have
Wow.
a drink with.
Jackie, thank you so much for being here with us. Tony, this has been an amazing episode, right?
Absolutely.
What a great way to start the season. I mean, fantastic.
And she said you can say no to an agent. Is
Oh
that-
my goodness,
I've
I
never
love
heard
it.
of that.
Jackie's journey proves that success doesn't just belong to those who choose the safest path. Jackie, thank you so much for having us. Roger, thank you for producing this event. And of course, we've got Archer and Bree right back there working behind the camera. Thank you everyone for watching such an exciting episode. You can check us out every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube or all the various podcast platforms. It was so good hosting with Tony and of course, seeing Jackie again. Thanks everyone and see you next week. Bye everyone.